Work in a call center. Need to increase talk time. Call old guys. Ask them about fishing, cars, military politics. Call old ladies. Tell them you're considering kids with your husband/wife. Ask them about their grandkids/kids. Not where's your grandkid live. But you remind me of my grandma. I bet you're the one your grandkids call when they're unsure of big choices like this. Source. Got pulled into a meeting to discuss the fact that despite murdering every other KPI including upsells NPS net promoter score, essentially how much they liked you and would recommend the company based on their experience, my average talk time was lower than what they wanted. Got pulled into another meeting at the end of that shift to discuss my 6-hour call with a World War II vet, and told to not worry about talk time in future. Defined. To clarify some points on the 6-hour call with Arthur. Wasn't my first long call, but definitely the longest by 4 and a bit hours. Sometimes when we'd already hit targets for the day and didn't want to lower our strike rate, we'd ride out a call for 45 minutes or so till the end of shift. Sometimes with genuine convo. More often we had to milk it. This call, however, took no work on my part. I got really lucky. I felt like I was talking to a version of myself who was just born in the 1920s. We had such similar takes on so many things. If I met this guy at a pub, I woulda ended up talking to him for ages as well. About an hour and a half, and he asked if I had to go and do some work since he wasn't buying or upgrading or anything. In my service voice I told him something along the lines of, here at Giant Telco every customer is invaluable, so my job is to make sure you're getting the most out of your telephone and internet services. And we don't put a time limit on that process. He definitely knew there was some shenanigans going on my part as we talked about corporate bureaucracy as well as everything else under the sun. I think he just assumed it was my last day or something. I managed to take multiple pee breaks, as did he, where I talked to his carer for a bit, and I even ducked down to grab some food, which I ate at my desk just by asking him if it was alright if I popped him on hold for a couple minutes. I originally posted this as an answer for a ULPT request and had multiple suggestions to post it on here. Glad you guys liked it. Also glad I found this sub, it's hilarious. It's like they keep changing rules to see how high you'll jump. Or holy speed, I didn't think they'd jump that high. Thank you for can land now. Nah, man. I'm good. I read that in Korg's voice, lol. Ref. I went to work sick because 6 sick days meant you were fired. This wicked cold was going around the call center. By about 3:30 I had no voice left. I was screaming into the phone and people couldn't hear me. My soup told me if I went home that it feeping counted as a sick day. After suffering all day. So my next call I got this old bird. Happy to talk and talk and talk. And forget call control. I had no voice and she couldn't hear. Totally had a nice hour-long chat with her. And soup didn't say one feeping word. Lol. I could never work for a business that treated their employees like that. I'd probably end up punching a manager. I do understand that some people don't have a choice. When you have a family to feed and bills to pay, you take what you can get. Yup. It was that or starve. I made it through a really fancy Canon camera for selling the most services right when digital camera became a thing. I then had a couple call one on each extension and scream at me over a 111 late charge on their bill. I explained that if they paid their bill on the due date that their bank took its time getting the money to us, and I could see they called every month with this same problem. I was trying to help. And I was going to waive the fee like every two before had. When the husband started screaming, "Mom shut up, Mom shut up," I was like, "I'm sorry, are you telling me to shut up?" Every rep around me stood up to watch the show. I was confused. I couldn't figure out who was talking, who was yelling. I thought there was a fourth person on the line yelling at the woman for yelling at me. Finally they asked for my supervisor. We weren't allowed to escalate on our own. I freaking threw my headset at him and ran to the washroom to cry. Done. I went back to working in kitchens despite chronic pinched nerves in my foot. The pain was preferable to the psychological torture. I can't work in jobs that involve me dealing with the public because you aren't allowed to say, "I'm sorry, you are stupid." Worked in a call center, for the government actually. So while I have no experience with the general public at PC was technical support. I think my take home is that while I dealt with some of the most powerful people in the ministry at one point or another, everybody seemed stupid. And that's for two reasons. One, the stress of the job. Stress often on both ends. The other side is talking about something they don't really understand. Our computer system was also very, very heavily controlled and everything was thin client or remote services. Really just a patchwork put together to look like a computer. And also whatever the problem was getting in the way of an already stressful job. Then on our side it's just stressful being a slave to the phone and chained to the KPIs, all while dealing with a stressed out customer. The customer doesn't care what the problem is or how it's fixed, and as I said, they don't really understand or want to understand. They just want to do their job. It adds up to make the customer look like impatient and uneducated children when the truth is some of them were some of the most successful lawyers or politicians in the public sector country. When you are trying to guide them through something you know intimately and they don't really get it, or even attempt to get it, I think the added stress everyone is feeling just burns you out and it's impossible to see them as a person. I think it's especially true considering how much respect and dignity we should be affording people with actual disability, of which there were plenty of callers. The whole proxy call system for the deaf is unsettling. Of course there are plenty of people who know exactly what they are doing when they call up and try to game the system. Don't bullspeak me. You and I both know exactly why your password isn't working. It would have taken exactly 5 minutes and zero effort from both of us. Why you got to be like that? I worked in a call center for outsourced building management for Gov. I got in many heated discussions about sorry, we don't deal with your security systems. You will have to call your branch security to have your pass sorted, at 7 a.m. when their pass wasn't letting them in the buildings in winter. My lord, people get mad. I understand though, because it would have been frustrating as hell, but we didn't have individual security office numbers for the 500 buildings we looked after. Another thing was boil/chill water units. They're plumbed in through the standard sink tap, and when the boil unit broke, the normal tap wouldn't work. Many argument about send a plumber, when you actually have to send a boil tech lol. Public servants though, they don't like noise. I had one lady call, I answered 7 times in one day. And 3 of my colleagues spoke to her a few times as well. She had a community piano on ground level outside of her window. She was 2 stories up, and the sound was echoing up the concrete walls of the complex. Do something about it, she says. Ma'am, I can't. It's a local council thing. You'll have to call them. But this is your job. Fix the noise. Really, we only deal with building faults. You will have to call the council office and speak with them. Lamau, many memories working that job. I had an older dude in another state. He called me his bestie. He had grandkids and brought them into work every now and again and would call up and ask for me so that I could speak with them. He also taught me an acronym for Wombat Aussie Animal Women of Beauty and Temptation Lamau. It was a brilliant job. High stress, competitive, purposeful and ever-changing. I got poached by my current boss from that team. I had learned all I could from that position and I think it showed. So he pulled me into what I do now. Ha ha ha, 6 hours talk time with World War II vet. That's fantastic. One of the most memorable calls I had was with a World War II vet. My talk time was always around 3 minutes. I worked fraud calls. Pretty simply, it was hey, did you make this charge? Pretty binary most of the time. No? Okay, we'll take care of it and get you a knee card to your address on file or yes. Okay, sorry to bother. We wanted to make sure there wasn't any fraud. Only the Karens and Kevins peeped up the flow when they'd sweat up and down it was our fault or it was an inside job, which is laughably rare. All we had to do was stay under 5.5. No problem. Anyhow, got to talking to this guy who'd written an autobiography that was something like 18 to 20 pages and shot the speep for about an hour, which didn't even dent my call times over the course of a month. It was awesome. Dude had been through some speep and his autobiography was fairly matter of fact while being humble. I checked up on him for a while afterwards until he passed around 2010 I think it was. Took tens of thousands of calls, and I only remember the details of a few. Hey, former fraud rep here too. My favorite part was declining chargebacks for things the store had proof for haha. People just thought they'd buy it and say it was fraud and not pay for it. That and catching perps on the phone. Well, catching as in letting them know we knew what they were up to. But at least our bank didn't prosecute anybody, we just tried to not lose money. That's something fraudsters rely on a lot. They won't get in trouble unless the store itself decides to call the police or the consumer whose info they were using files a police report, and most people don't have the time or will for that. But yeah, it was fun to be like, yep we know. Nope, not turning the card back on. Oh, I've moved off the phones over the years, through investigations, AML, and high profiles cases including kidnapping and murders, the rich and famous, etc. And have locked more than a few people up. Moved to a new bank a while back where I prosecute at some absurd rate compared to my peers because I have the prior experience. It's peeping dope, man. Satisfying AF. Ah yes, we did have a high-dollar department that I guess might try to catch them. I was frontline, so mainly less than 1,000 fraud transactions the bank would rather just absorb than spend money investigating. I'm not working in that field since 2018. Frankly, part of why people liked you was probably at least in part that you didn't keep them on the phone all day. I was literally told this when I had to do pharmaceutical calls in person. I showed up, told them what they needed to know about the product, super friendly, and left. They don't make money talking to me. They started to smile when they saw me coming because they knew the chat would be informative and pleasant. And I'm sure that translated into above average sales numbers since the people would actually listen to what you had to say and weren't just desperate to get rid of you. Proof: when a KPI becomes a target, it stops being a key performance indicator. Numbers to meet numbers. You probably made that vet so happy. That's what I was thinking, lol. Especially if it happened recently with everyone needing to isolate so much. It's almost like they're concerned about the wrong friggin' metrics. The way they explained it to me was that the data crunchers had determined 34 minutes was the sweet spot for conversions. As I pointed out, that was probably because most of our agents left within a month, and the ancient provisioning software we used took about 3 months to really get the hang of. So for your first month you were trying to keep them on the phone to provision the order, as you were only allotted 10% of the call time for after-call work. It seems like it might be a decent metric to go after to help you hit the ones you already were. It always confuses the speep out of me why management will alter how their best producers are working. First, that I've heard a call center wants you to spend longer on each call. My parents once told me that if they are polite and not pushy, let them stay on the line for a few minutes, as some of them don't get paid unless they are on the phone for 5 minutes and they are just trying to earn some money. Bruh, if I'm on the phone for 5 or more minutes, my manager starts breathing down my neck. I never knew the dangers people faced being a phone sex operator. Back when I used to work for an ISP, we had a KPI that worked out to a minimum of 103 customer contacts in 9 hours. 5 minutes per person. Now, that might not sound too bad, but bear in mind this included data protection checks, and was applied to fault calls where we might have to discuss what tests they'd been able to do, give them a checklist of what still needed to be done, and so on. And sales, with assessing their requirements and talking them through how much data a GB would give them in terms of roughly how much video, photos, general web browsing, and so on. And first-level complaints that could easily include 10 minutes of them screaming incoherently and refusing to let you know that their fault is showing as fixed on the system. So if they reboot their router, they should connect in a minute or so. Or better yet, that they're showing as having sheneged their password, but they're still trying to log in with the old one. It's God's own mystery as to why they make you stay on a call when someone is yelling at you. I used to tell my folks to warn them, then hang up. 3 strikes and the customer got fired. Happy to fix any problem, of course, but I've got no time for people who made my team miserable. Life's too short for that, and you can almost guarantee they were tiny customers. Always good to get a manager who'll back you on that. It varied unfortunately by team leader in that job. When I changed teams, my leeway on hanging up on screaming customers changed enormously. I did though get to hang up one guy regardless of team leader instructions when he said he knew where our head office was, and that he was driving down with his shotgun. In England, that call got terminated immediately, and I took that to the floor manager instantly, and we had an armed police van sat in our car park for the next 6 hours. Most won't back you, I know. Ironically, the job of a great manager is to hire people smarter than themselves and mentor them.